Welcome back. Hope you had lovely coffees. We're running slightly over time, so I'm just going to crack straight on. As I said before the break, we've got Publishing Corner, TED style. Now there's a challenge, but we've got some formidable people taking part in it. And first up is my lovely friend from the Telegraph Media Group, who is the Chief Customer Officer, and I know he's got lots of interesting things to say. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Robert Bridge.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back from your coffee break. So, let's get these slides to work. Or not. Are we on? There we go. All right. So, yeah, as mentioned, I'm the Chief Customer Officer at the Telegraph. That includes marketing, design and UX, subscriptions, data and analytics, and also customer care. And I think most of you in the room probably know who the Telegraph are. Who you don't, if you don't, we're a quality publisher. We have about 90 million unique browsers, unique visitors across the world every month. And we've had quite a big change in our strategy and in our model over the last 6 to 9 months. So I'm going to give you a little insight into how we've made that change, and also how data has underpinned that evolution. Unsurprisingly to many of you, the last, I guess, 15 years have been pretty radical in the change, and the last couple of years have been even more radical in the change for the publishing industry. We obviously started with our print product in 1855, and since then we've increased the channels that we distribute our content onto over 15 channels. So we have a digital edition, which is a full replication of the newspaper on the iPad and on larger phones. We have the website, which we launched in 1994. We have a new app that takes its cue from Snapchat and from Instagram, and is much more visual. And now we distribute across many of the big platforms that you would expect. So on Apple News, on Google Newsstand, Facebook Instant Articles, Instagram, Yahoo, and MSN. And most recently, we've been distributing our content in audio format across podcasts, and then also on Amazon Alexa, and most recently in the last month or so on Google Home. So it really has changed a load, and it is genuinely a fascinating business to be in. I think a lot of people, when they think about some of the legacy publishers, don't quite understand how interesting it is as a business, and how diverse, and how there is this real meeting of technology and content. However, and I am massively optimistic about the industry. I'm naturally an optimist, so I would always be so. But if you think about the advertisers' needs for a trusted environment, if you think about the need for quality journalism in this moment in time, how consumers are now consuming paid content in a way that they've never done before, thanks to our friends at Netflix and Spotify, and also the amount of data that you can get from across these platforms, then there are reasons to be optimistic. However, optimism only gets you so far, and you need a business model that's really going to work for you in this modern environment. And this is where we've made some big changes as I mentioned, over the last 9 months. It is our belief that you have to have a diversified business. You have to have multiple revenue streams, and we believe that there has to be a very robust advertising business. You have to have a subscription model there, driving revenue from subscriptions. And probably slightly uniquely to us is we believe in e-commerce and events being a real growth area for us. So we have a very successful travel e-commerce business selling holidays around our quality travel journalism, and the same in the financial services around our money content. And we also have an events business that's tied to them and beyond. So these are the 3 areas that we believe you need to have revenue streams coming out of. But you also need to have a content model that supports that. And so in November, we moved to a freemium model, freemium content model. And a freemium content model, for those of you that don't know, means that we have an open layer where content is unambiguously free, and a paid, hard paywall area that is we call that the premium layer for us. And in our case, 80% of our content is in the open layer, free to access, and distributed on all third-party platforms, or pretty much all third-party platforms. And then our premium content, which is about 20% of the content we produce on a daily basis, has this hard paywall, and we distribute that on our owned and operated sites, but increasingly on third parties where there is a paywall option. So for example, we just launched on Apple News with our content in the paywall there. So that's the model. And to make it work, data is super key to this. It is much more complicated a business than many other publishers who are only going after advertising as their sole source or subscriptions as their sole source. We want to win in that and in e-commerce. And so as such, we've taken a really data-first view. The reason my role exists is that to put the customer at the center of what we do, but also to be as data-led and data-informed. And on this chart that you can see up now, this is a segmented view of our audience. And we've applied a live segmentation to our audience. And each one of those segments, those bubbles there, has a huge amount of data behind it. And you can drill down into hundreds and hundreds of different data points. The platforms that they've come from, the content they've digested, their interests, everything that you would expect in this modern day. And we've plotted that segmentation against revenue per user on the x-axis and against engagement on the y-axis. And it's basically like a modern-day marketing funnel. So from the bottom left, we have the attract phase, and a lot of this is the work that we do with the third parties, with the Apple News and the Facebooks of this world, bringing people into our content and into our brand. And then we look to migrate people, and we look to bring people into our owned and operated sites and apps, and drive greater engagement with them when they're on our sites and when they're on our apps. And then ultimately, we want to try to drive them into a transact phase, try to drive them into buying a holiday or buying a mortgage or buying a subscription. So those are the areas that we're looking at. And here's an example of how we're doing that. If you look at this bubble up here on the top left, which is the enthusiasts, these are people that are consuming over 100 page views every month, and yet the only money we make from them is from advertising. And we all know the pressures that digital advertising is under at the moment. So we are undergoing tactics and strategies to try and drive them into a subscription. And we're starting to do that with some real intelligence and use some of the stuff that you've seen on the main stage today. So some of the algorithms and AI and models that our data scientists in my team are creating, along with our performance marketers, to create lookalike models, to create propensity models, and do that in a real-time way to understand when users are likely to buy something or move into a subscription mode. And also it's starting to inform our content and our product strategy. So this data is being used by the editorial staff on a daily basis, even an hourly basis, to work out what content is driving a subscription or driving somebody into a more engaged state. And they're starting to create more content based on the data and the feedback they're getting around these areas. So for example, when we first launched this, we found out that rugby and politics were really driving the highest amount of conversions from a subscriptions perspective. So we've been super serving in those areas, creating more content and creating products that serve that area. So we're becoming smarter, we're using the data in a better way. And all of this has benefits across the whole spectrum of our business. So if somebody buys a holiday, we use that data to bring back into our data lake and into our DMP. And then that data can then be used by the advertisers as well. So all these segments are live for the advertisers. They can use these segments to drive against their goals and their KPIs. So in summary, we're pretty optimistic about the future. We know the challenges, but we see the ever-increasing channels that I talked about at the beginning in the ways that people can consume quality journalism as an opportunity. We genuinely see that, and we see the Apples and the Facebooks of the world offering opportunity if you're not solely reliant on advertising. And we really believe that the diversified model is the key to the future. You have to have multiple revenue streams as a publisher to provide quality journalism for the next 150, 160 years, in our belief. And underpinning all of that is this idea of a segmented, multi-channel, real-time, business-ready being super critical. It's great to have data, but if it's not actually usable, then it's a complete waste of time. Customer data to drive the business forward. So with that, I have finished 50 seconds early. Look at that.
Amazing.
That way.
I love it when people are on time. Thank you so much. Thanks, Robert. And I'm sure you've got lots and lots of questions for him. But the way we're going to do this session is we're going to do them at the end of the 3 TED-style Publishing Corner talks. So I know there's a question just over there, but we're just going to wait right to the end and then save your questions for then. So next up, we have another chap in the publishing world, Sebastian Tomich, who is the Senior Vice President at the New York Times for sales. So come up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good stuff.
All right. Dun, dun, dun. Good afternoon, everybody. Wait, we can't skip that. No, wait. One more. There we go. I had to figure out a way to get Donald Trump in my presentation. You'd think that when the President of the United States calls you out as a publisher once a week, this would be the scariest thing going on with our business, but I can assure you it's not. The advertising business is going through what I would say is probably the biggest transition in its history, where you have media companies that have relied on selling distribution for their entire history, and then now are having to pivot when you have the likes of Facebook and Google taking nearly all of the ad budgets. So how do we make our money? To put it into context, I started my career at a business magazine in 2008, Forbes, and I remember looking around thinking the ad sales business is amazing. Everybody makes huge salaries. We were out partying with our clients. Fast forward 2 years later, and 20% of our competitors had gone out of business. Our sales staff was in half, and I was still considering, okay, where do we go from here? That business looked like this. We had a huge team of salespeople that sit around on their computers, and they'd wait for RFPs to come in. They'd collect those RFPs. They would sit down and say, where should I place this ad business? They'd sit with their creative team. They'd say, what about this box? If I got really creative, you're a fashion advertiser, I'm going to put you next to the fashion section. Or wait, digital comes around, I have this new super forward-thinking box, a banner ad. We place you next to the article page. The advertiser sends the ad. It delivers in full. Finance bills. We repeat this process. This is a great business. We never wanted it to change. What's happening today? There is no RFP. We have a huge sales team sitting at their desk waiting for that email to come in, and it's not coming in. We get meetings with clients. In the old model, you'd have the salesperson, their boss, their boss's boss, their boss's boss's boss would come into the meeting, and we try to sell clients. Now you have to go with the client and try to solve a business problem, and when you do that, you can't bring a whole team of salespeople. You have to bring ad product experts, technology experts, creatives that can help brainstorm live in the moment. The client says, I want something never been done before, only something our two brands can do together, and it needs to reach audiences as efficiently as Snapchat and Facebook. Oh, by the way, I want as much scale as NBC and CBS in primetime. I want to match my customer data with yours. I want it to get press. I want my CMO to be on the cover of Ad Age. And I'd like it all to be video. And half price. Thank you. And by the way, none of it should look like advertising. Who's winning this game? This guy. Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, Snapchat, they've figured it out. So what does a legacy media company do in this new environment? Well, we call this movement Power to the Creators internally. We're going to turn to the thing now that platforms cannot disrupt for now, and that's the ability to create things worth paying for. Either it's our newsroom becoming a creative engine or our ad business becoming a creative engine. We put all of our chips into this new ideas business. That means our newsroom shifting from publishing more articles to reach more audiences to producing things like this, a program that we kicked off with Samsung last year called the Daily 360. Their CMO came and met with our team. They want to get in the VR business. We said, what if we took Samsung's 360 camera, outfitted our entire newsroom, and agreed to publish one 360 video a day from around the world? This program has now been going on for 6 months. Journalism by the New York Times, technology by Samsung. It means we go from selling things like this, the beloved banner ad, to programs like this, a recent program we just kicked off with Netflix the 13th, about the mass incarceration, the state of mass incarceration and its relation to modern day slavery. These are experiences that we build that go far beyond kind of the bounds of traditional digital advertising. One of the things we've learned as now being in this creative business is experiences are key. You have to move experiences to the top of the conversation. You can't start with, I'm going to build this box, or I'm going to reach this many people. It's what's an experience I'm delivering for your customer. So to respond to that, we acquired an experiential agency last year called Fake Love, and now nearly every program we do starts with conversations like this. Our newsroom has also adopted this model. When they approach stories, they're often thinking about what's the angle to the story where I can take a reader and place them inside of it. You see that a lot with our VR work. This was our most popular VR film last year. It's called Man on Spire, where the cover of our Sunday magazine issue was taking you to the top of every New York skyscraper. Well, what if we actually allowed you to experience it with the person who's doing it live? So Jimmy Chin climbing the top of One World Trade. For our ad partners, it means going in and pitching like a creative agency. We just finished this program with Kia. We did a series of events with them where we turned their car into an instrument. So actually stripped it down piece by piece and rebuilt it. So if you can imagine a team of crazy technologists sitting next to John Legend playing the piano, that's what we did. Another interesting learning for us has been the value of connections to people. You need people to have a differentiator compared to the platforms. That's not a platform game. So how do we work on a more personal level, both with our readers and with our advertisers? Our newsroom is actively thinking about our journalists having a personal relationship with our readers as a differentiator. So if you look here, our sports editor, Sam Manchester, live from the Rio Olympics last year, sending text messages from the ground to 50,000 subscribers. This is a personal relationship that we replicated during the election. We may not have got it right, so you may have gotten some bad information during those texts, but still an enhanced way to connect with our readers. And then on the ad side, we're thinking about that buzzworthy term, social influencers. How do you work with influencers in the future? We believe that the Times' credibility in this space can add transparency and take advantage of some of the value that they bring. So we've been bringing influencers more and more and more into our ad programs and placing them as the subjects of the content we create, and then from there, they take it and they can distribute it and create their own versions of social creative. So the ad business as we know it is over. I've just said that. These are the things that we're focusing on a daily basis with our clients. In the old days, we used to sit down and all gripe about pricing and impressions and click-through. Those conversations seem to be over, and the things that we're moving to are all about delivering something that's never been done before, or data-informed strategies, or looking for ownable platforms outside of the Times. So what can we build that has value outside of the Times? I always go back to this chart. When I started in the ad business in 2008, everybody was obsessed with the Lumascape. A lot of publishers went on all in and tried to figure out, okay, how do we play in this world? Well, anybody who did, AKA someone like Yahoo, got wiped out. Facebook and Google won this game, and any publisher who is still thinking about this is really going to be toast going forward into the future. We are focused on a different chart, and that's all the different creative partners that sit in between a marketer and a publisher, and how can we provide more and more value and get that relationship closer. It's a different business, but it's a business we think we can win at in the future. So, thank you.
So again, save your questions. We've got one more speaker, Ted Stahl, for the next 10 minutes. And that's Hamish Nicklin, who is the Chief Revenue Officer for The Guardian. Thank you. So many names.
That's all right. Well remembered. So it seems like only yesterday I was coming to wonderful events like this and listening to people on stage or on panels say that this year, and it was probably 2013, 2014, was going to be the year that branded content really comes to the fore. Oh, what wonderful, exciting, heady days they were. And at the time, we used to say all sorts of things, bandy about loads of statistics, such as this one. You are more likely to be accepted into the US Navy SEALs than you are to click on a banner ad. Remember that one? That was one of my favorites. I used to use that all the time. We used to say the only way to get cut through in this incredibly crazy, noisy, cluttered digital environment was to create stories that people would engage with. And we used to say things like, branded content is actually just digital advertising done properly. And everyone got involved. 3.5 years ago at The Guardian, we set up Guardian Labs, which was essentially our own in-house branded content agency. And then lots of others followed suit in the UK. We saw media agencies turn their sponsorship teams and rebrand them to content divisions. We saw advertisers bring their own studios in-house. And in London, in Soho, we saw branded content agencies popping up all over the place, claiming to be experts in this new skill. And that's set to continue. According to research from Yahoo and Enders, by 2020, the investment in branded content is due to grow 180% to £350 million. That's a lot of content out there. Now, the reasons we got into this were as true today as they were 3.5, 4 years ago. That cluttered ecosystem, the need to connect with consumers in new and different ways. But the challenge is, because there are so many of us creating what is most of the time pretty shit, we've just added to the noise. We've just added to the clutter. In fact, many of us have actually just made it even harder to do the thing we set branded content teams up to do in the first place, which was to cut through the noise and to connect with our consumers. The other thing about this is that consumers themselves, human beings that we're trying to reach, have got much, much better at sniffing out when brands have inauthentically wrapped themselves around a trend that they think is relevant to them. You know the world has got completely out of control when a wonderful brand like Pepsi takes two completely different trends and tries to merge them together. You know, on the one hand, vacuous social media celebrity, and on the other, highly charged political protests. It's insane. Surely this crazy amateur gold rush to nirvana of branded content has to come to an end. Surely now is the time to look for experts. I mean, I think, you know, gone are the days where you can get away with just producing a nice bit of content, a nice, warm, fuzzy story. Or worse, creating a gadget or a gizmo or some widget that, whilst uses the latest bit of innovation and technology and probably wins some awards in somewhere like Cannes, actually doesn't even get a human to take an action, doesn't get them to do anything. Now, we need to create content that inspires people to take action. For publishers, those who will win in this space will be those who can create content that actually does just that, inspires people to take action. And for advertisers, if there are any of you in the room, my advice is be careful, because you're going to be getting your doors knocked down by people telling you left, right, and center that they can produce loads of content very cheaply, very quickly. But be careful, because now is not the time for amateurs. Right now is the time for experts. And forgive me, I'm about to pitch just for 1 minute. This is where publishers, premium publishers, such as The Guardian and these wonderful gentlemen on the stage, this is where we excel. So at The Guardian, every month we generate 1 billion page views from our 155 million global unique users. That takes us into the top 3 English-speaking news brand in the world. And whatever you define content as, I'd say those stats mean that we're pretty good at it. But not only that, we get our readers to do things from the profound, such as helping us generate £4 million for our Syrian refugee appeal, all the way to the everyday, like trying a new recipe or trying a new place to go on holiday or a new bit of tech gadgetry. We get our readers to do things. And that quality, that level of quality and pace relies on having a building full of people who have got a nose for a story and who understand how the events that go on in the world impact on our emotions. And they know how to turn that into write stories that inspire people to act. Now, this nose for a story, this instinct, if you like, is sharpened by the use of cutting-edge data and analytics, a tool that we built internally that gives us access to understand exactly what it is that people are interested in right now, exactly how they found that content, exactly which formats, whether that's a video, an article, a piece of virtual reality, are working best, and how they discovered that content. And it's that potent mix of insight and data that got us thinking, does the world really need another branded content agency? Does the world really need Guardian Labs as it stands? We were incredibly proud of it when we launched it 3.5 years ago, but do we need just another branded content agency? What if we could completely re-engineer it and reimagine it as the Guardian's commercial features desk. Now, think about it. For those of you who don't live in publishing every day, features is basically everything that news isn't. It's the deeper dive into current affairs. It's the interview with a star. It's the memorable, moving, personal account or story. It's a playful quiz that tells you something about yourself. It's something that adds color and context to the world around us. And it's flexible and playful and can be created in completely different ways, right? So it can be expressed in so many ways, whether that is a 100-word article or a 10,000-word essay, whether it's a made-for-Facebook 1-minute video or a series of 20-minute documentaries built for your TV screen. It could be a gallery of beautiful images crafted specifically to express the emotions that you're trying to get across in that particular moment. Or it could be cutting-edge use of virtual reality technology to give a really much more immersive technology and experience. That's the beauty of features. And really what features are is just a reflection of everything and anything. It's something that brings to life the trends that are currently gripping us, the zeitgeist, the popular culture. That could be fashion, the clothes that we wear, the way I want to bring up my kids, where I'm going to next go on holiday, or how I'm going to pay the mortgage for my house. All of these things cut across features. Just in the same way that brands and products feature in our daily lives. And in the same way that popular culture and advertising have been very comfortable bedfellows for so many years, why can't branding content and features be much more aligned in how they approach life? So when we first set up Guardian Labs 3.5, 4 years ago, we did what many people have subsequently done. We basically set it up as if it was an ad agency. So we hired a bunch of advertising execs, a bunch of creatives, a bunch of planners, a bunch of product people, a bunch of technologists, and our processes and our procedures were exactly the same as if a brief was coming in to an ad agency. And the reality is, a lot of the work we did was wonderful, and it was award-winning, and it did shift the needle for our clients. But the truth is, as we look at it in a bit more detail, we realized that it wasn't creating consistently good work as the guys in the core editorial team were doing, or at the scale of audiences that we would expect. And when you consider everything I've just said about how the paucity of the quality of a lot of the work that's out there, right, but how a features desk truly works by the fusing of instinct and data, we said, well, why don't we go down that route? So essentially what we did 3 to 6 months ago, and what we have been doing over that time period, is just ripped up the rule books of what Guardian Labs is. We ripped up the operating model that told us we had to behave as if we were an ad agency, and we said, let's become a commercial features desk. So about 5 months ago, I hired our head of fashion, who used to be our head of fashion in our core editorial team, to become our exec editor for Labs. And she brought with her a bunch of commissioning editors who used to write and commission some of our best features in core editorial. They now sit and run a commercial features desk. Their job is to work together to create the sort of content that our readers want and brands and advertisers expect from us. It's engaging, it's intelligent, it's playful, and above all, it inspires people to take action. Now, just like in core editorial, the juxtaposition we have here between instinct and data is important. So we chucked a bunch of audience editors in there who will help them understand completely who's reading the content, what's trending, and more importantly, how do we generate the biggest, most engaged audience to that, and also what formats to use. And of course, to ensure they don't just create another features desk that creates wonderful content but with no activity for a brand, we support them with strategists who really understand how brands work. So I'm very conscious of time, so I've got a couple of things, case study I was going to share with you, but needless to say, it's working. Right? Our readers are loving it, our brands are loving it, and we're having genuine impact on our users. So the final thing I would say is, look, if digital advertising done well is simply the fusion of creativity and data, then branding content, which is also just the fusion of instinct and technology and data, is just digital advertising done well. But it's bloody hard to do, right? It's really hard to do that properly. So don't believe the shysters who will knock on your door and say that they can create as much content as you possibly want in no time at all for no money, right? Because that's not real, right? Look to those people who know how to create content and have been doing so for many, many years. Thank you very much.
Always love to finish on a controversial note. Right, so now it's time for questions. We've got time for about 3 questions. So ideally, and I'm definitely going to come to you first, sir, because you were the one that came up first. Ideally, a question for each speaker. That would be really nice. So first of all, I'm going to come to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi there, I'm João. I own a company called Gat Social. It's a dark social analytics platform working with Forbes and with Sky. My question would be for Robert. So you were talking about that path that the consumer or the reader goes from awareness to a transaction. How much of that data is logged in data versus anonymous data, and is there a connection between the conversion of the 2 types of user, one better, one worse? That's it.
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things we did, one of the reasons we put the open premium model into place was we offered 1 article free per week in the premium layer if you registered and logged in, and that's increased our logged in behavior by 300% since we've done that. And yes, the more logged in behavior that you see, the greater engagement, and therefore the higher likelihood to transact. So for sure, that is a step on the path to transact. There are transactions occurring between non-logged in users, but it is more likely, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. I've got a question here. Thanks, Dominic.
3 great presentations, many thanks. A question actually probably for any of you is, what is the business case for giving content to the social channels today? Surely they've been having a free lunch at your expense.
Yeah, well, why don't I start, because some of us have differing views on, or differing strategies. As I said, the business case on the advertising side alone is tricky, because the yield at the moment from those pages are less than the yield on our own and operated sites. But we see value of using those platforms to drive people into different states. So in our case, driving them into subscription, which we can do in Apple News now. Facebook are starting to offer opportunities to drive non-advertising transactions, whether that's driving someone into an email or driving them into other products. That seems to be coming down the line. So we see the value there. If we looked at it just through an advertising lens at the moment, the argument would be tricky, but we're seeing it across the bigger picture.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think so. We've pivoted. So we were on all the platforms, and essentially now we've been ratcheting down each of our presences. The tension, if it wasn't for our subscription business, the kind of value in building the brand to new audiences, you would never see us on Facebook or, well, Snapchat too. But it's kind of top of the funnel advertising for us. So we like to sample a little bit, give people a taste, but in the end, we want to drive people back to the destination. The one model that I am bullish on is as these platforms basically become the modern day TV network, them treating us as a production company. So the relationship between ABC and Paramount in the US is going to be very similar to the relationship between Facebook and the New York Times in the future. So you saw this play out with Facebook Live, where they went out and basically paid a few publishers multi-millions to produce live content. You're seeing Snapchat pivot to this model now, where we don't have anything to do with the advertising. Frankly, they are better at selling advertising than we are, but we are better at creating content than they are. So let's each do what we do best, and you can work together in a direct relationship. So inevitably, I feel like that model is the future, because it's the only way that the publisher can truly compete and not cannibalize its own business.
Hamish, would you like to answer?
Yeah, I mean, our situation is probably somewhere in between the two, actually. I mean, we're still on all the platforms, just not in their closed ecosystem part. So we're not in instant articles, for instance, or Apple News, but we're still published to Facebook. And the reason being is that the amount of money that we can generate from advertising and reader revenues from a reader who comes from Facebook to The Guardian owned and operated is still pretty chunky. But when we did the maths and looked at how much money we could make by staying in instant articles, it just didn't make sense. And we haven't seen any significant loss in reader audiences either.
Thank you very much. We've got time for one more question at the front.
I'm just quite curious. You're coming from media companies which have very strong political stances. How do you overcome clients' desire to be in brand neutral spaces?
Brand neutral. So just controversial environments.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
each of you have very distinctive political ideologies, and many brands would want to be in, I guess, banal. I don't know what adjective you want to find, but very neutral spaces.
It depends what the brand wants to do. I mean, what we found is if it's just placing an ad in it, they really don't have a problem. I mean, we make the choice to take ads out of some of our more controversial content. So when there's a terror attack, God forbid, that's when we don't put ads in there. So we have sensitive content. We don't put it against that. When it comes to branded content, now that's a completely different kettle of fish. We both work together to say when we're comfortable, when we're not.
See, I think this isn't a new issue for us. I mean, this has been going on for years. I think you do the same stuff, so we try to avoid controversial areas for brands. It's a perception that we have a political point of view, but in reality, I mean, I don't even know if it's in reality, but the party line, we would say we have opinion and we have news. And news does not have a political bias, and opinion, in essence, does. We are fighting hard to counteract that point of view. So the number one reason why people have canceled the Times subscription in the past is because they feel like we're a leftist publication. So 2 weeks ago, we hired...
Come to us.
They come to The Guardian. So 2 weeks ago, we hired our first true conservative columnist. And you might have seen it. We had Bret Stephens publish his first column, basically playing to climate change being potentially a hoax. So it's an interesting dynamic going on our opinions pages, but it presents us as being more neutral per se, or just facilitating a dialogue versus a one strict point of view. I will say the place where it gets kind of behind closed doors most interesting is when you have a client who has a specific political point of view, and either their brand might be perfect, but let's just say they are a staunch conservative, they most likely will not be placing their advertising with the Times.
And very, very quickly from our side, I mean, we're 155 years old. We've always had a slightly right-of-centre viewpoint. Advertisers have always bought advertising with us. And my colleague from the slightly on the left is questioning my slightly on the right. But anyway, the advertisers have always known this, and I don't think anything has changed in the modern way. I think it's important from a brand perspective. As a marketer, it's good to know what we stand for and who we are and who we appeal to. So I think it's something that brands should be proud of if that's where they have.
Lovely. And on that note, I was going to say thank you very much to Robert, Sebastian, and Hamish.